barely made it through the summer, Dustin.
Yeah.
Barely.
Well, we're here. We're at the end of it anyway.
We're at the end, and school is back, and it's great because I'm so worn out. Just
yep.
Completely worn out.
Yeah, I can imagine, dude.
Completely worn out. And so is Kellen, apparently. So he will not be joining us tonight. So we're going to talk about some TV shows.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Another thing that wiped me out was that Blitz month. Got me.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So television. I'm going to lead us off, but you've watched more things. So I'm just going to sort of go down the line here.
Go for it.
All right. I'm going to give an overall recommendation for Atlanta.
Okay.
This being the TV show starring Donald Glover, Brian Tyree Henry, Lakeith Stanfield, and Zazie Beetz, created by Donald Glover. And Atlanta. People know Atlanta.
Yep.
So this is a 4-season series. Originally ran on FX from 2016 to 2022. And I had been sort of watching it along the way, or like maybe a year or two behind. And then for some reason I fell off between the second and third seasons. And then when it ended, I was like, oh, I should, like I do when shows end. I'm like, oh, let me watch it before the internet is like replete with, spoilers. And like now I can't join the discussion of anything that references this show. It just, the water cooler effect got me. So I did chip away at the show, and I just rewatched it totally from the beginning because I didn't want to lose reference or anything. Probably didn't matter. Atlanta is an interesting bird. I can recommend the show, but the show, if anyone doesn't know, the show is about a guy played by Donald Glover, Earn, who starts managing his cousin Alfred, who is this rapper known as Paperboy, and it's essentially about his own growth as he manages this famous musician, famous rapper, and and the kind of bizarre things that happen along the way, which is a simple premise. That's what the show is. That's what the premise is. The show, the show's a comedy, but it's one of those kind of like Get Out. And you could probably intuit this from Donald Glover. There's a lot of shared influences between him and Jordan Peele, who I always looked out for. I was like, I wonder if Jordan Peele ever directed one of these episodes, and he didn't. But there are very similar styles in the weirder epidodes. But the concept is known as Afro surrealism, the genre, which whenever we go like, what does that mean? Like, what is Southern Gothic? It's like, well, it's Gothic literature with a Southern context. It's like, well, it's surrealism. Afro surrealism is surrealism with an Afrocentric context, the Black experience. Sure. So, anyway, like I said, I'd recommend the show to the average viewer because it's funny. But the average viewer may not appreciate or even be able to hang with how high concept the show is and how well made it is. There's clear, like, high concept influences that are pulled into the direction of this show and, the writing of this show. There's a whole lot of ambiguities sometimes. There's a lot of, wait, was that real? There's an episode where like someone keeps talking about, that guy's got an invisible car, and everyone's like, whatever. And like at the end of the episode, like this unseen object runs over a crowd of people, and you're like,
what?
Was the invisible car real? It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So it's one of those shows where I have to do a lot of Googling after each episode in order to get the full context of the story, and the themes that are being referenced. to get the most out of the show. So it is one of those shows where I think the average person won't understand everything it's saying on a first time viewing, or even a second or third. Like the people who get the most out of Atlanta are the educated and well-read, and well art exposed viewer, who has a sense of understanding of history and current events, especially, from the Black perspective. And it's just one of those shows where it's like good for it for being made for the creators and resonating with people to varying extents based on their own taste and whether or not it aligns with those creators. Like you can enjoy the show as a skin deep comedy, but you're not going to get much more out of it. If unless you can pick up on the themes and the voice of the show. So like as a writer, I would love to have done or have listened to like an after show podcast every week with the writers, just to be like, all right, tell me what the inspiration behind this episode was, because each one is so dense with material. So it was high concept TV series go. The later seasons and the finale leave it up to the viewer to interpret a lot. It gives the show a lot of rewatch value. But after season 2, you really can't watch it as passive entertainment because it gets real weird in the third season. And a lot of season 3 is almost an anthology. Like every other episode deals with our main characters and what they're doing in like Europe, but every episode in between that is a completely different set of characters that you'll only see in that episode. And it's dealing with like a subject, but it doesn't have really anything to do with the overall narrative of the main characters. It's sort of just like an accompanying theme side dish thing. So they feel like episodes of Atlanta, but they all feel like episodes of an alternate Atlanta with different cast members, not even the same role. Not like they're playing the same roles, but like there's an episode starring Justin Bartha from The Hangover. And the concept of that episode was racial reparations are happening. And this woman has tracked him down and discovered that his family owned her ancestors and she wants money. And so he gets like shamed out of his job, and his ex-wife won't talk to him or let him see their daughter anymore. And it's a whole episode about that. And it's like, that's a very Atlanta theme, but there's no way it would happen or, you couldn't involve the main cast in that kind of story. So it's interesting. But a lot of people were like, where's Donald Glover?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that, but like I said, you can't watch the show as passive entertainment. It never was that, and it deserves kind of your full attention when you're watching it. So that's like a asterisk next to my recommendation. It's a well-made show. It's a very creative show, and it's a show worth seeing, but you can't like sit down after like a stressful week at work and be like, woo, let's unwind by watching Atlanta. Because it's not really that. It's more like, I don't know. I like to recommend stuff that stands by itself, but it's one of those shows where watch it and then probably be prepared to just at least read the Wikipedia of the episode and hear someone say, well, this episode's actually referencing this real family that this happened to. And you might go, oh,
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to say, I've always respected Donald Glover for a lot of reasons. One, I think he's hilarious, and I think he's a great dramatic actor as well. But I think that he does things that interest him. Yep. And when he's bored by them or done with them, he is truly done with them. And so I've got a lot of respect for him. It's like, he's ending Childish Gambino right now.
Yep.
And so it's just like, I'm done. It served its purpose. I'm moving on. He left Community when it reached a point where he was like, I can't do anymore here. Like I've reached that point. And granted, he had bigger things he wanted to do, but also like he just lost interest. And you know what? I'd much rather see an artist say, I can't passionately tell this story anymore, so I'm done, as opposed to I'm just going to continue telling this, regardless of my interest level, and then the whole show suffers.
Yeah, that album, by the way, Bando Stone in the New World, just was released last month, and I think it was when he was on Hot Ones. I know the show name now.
Hot Wings.
Hot Wings. He was on Hot Ones, and I think that he was talking about the album, and he said, or maybe he was talking about all his work or just art in general, but he's like, you can't make it for anyone else. And it got me thinking about that whole concept, because obviously there are people like directors like Sean Levy or Chris Columbus, where it's like they're very solid above average directors. But I classify them as hired guns who know how to competently and creatively tackle something and elevate the material with style, but they're not auteurs like Denis Villeneuve or Chris Nolan, or David Fincher. So it's like you can make it for other people, but I guess Donald Glover's point is, I don't want to do that, and the person who's creating something out of nothing shouldn't do that. That's the thing. You're a director. You're not creating something out of nothing. You are bringing something to life that's already been born, in a way. You're a custodian of the material. So when you're creating music or, developing a television show or writing a book or whatever, I definitely side with Donald Glover, where it's like, yeah, you can't, truly fulfilling art can't be thought of as something that's supposed to be broadly appealing. It has to appeal to you, or you won't see it through. I respect that.
I guess there are like three schools of thought with this, and the most artistic one is the people who make art for themselves, like you said. Then there's the other approach where you're making art for, or you're making film for the audience.
Yeah.
And that's a valid approach, but it does yield sometimes more compromised visions, because you're constantly asking yourself, well, will the audience want this? Does the audience want that? And so you're not really sticking to a vision, you're sticking to a presumed vision, and that can lead you astray. And then there's the third option, and unfortunately this is where a lot of people fall these days, is they're making films not for themselves, not for the audience, but for some superficial reason, whether that's money, power, fame as a stepping stone, whatever it might be. It's some sort of like superficial, selfish reason why you might make a film. And of course that almost always yields garbage. So you'll notice like there are all these folks who want to make movies for a living. And so they go and make a movie. And if they're making a movie for themselves, a lot of times that ends up faring very well for them. But if they're making it specifically to like make a name for themselves, like I want to do this to build my thing, like I'm doing it as a stepping stone, I'm doing it to eventually get to where I want to get. Sometimes those projects end up feeling more self-serving than anything else. And so then they alienate the audience and they end up in some sort of little bubble of, well, this is just, this isn't for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's really not for them either, because it's not fulfilling them. They're using it to say like, I'm going to fulfill myself later on something else, but for now I'm going to make this. And that just doesn't work, because at that point there is no intended audience.
Yeah. And that's where just that's that skill really matters. Can you,
for sure.
Can you think of something that satisfies you, but present it in a way that, that executes and that other people would enjoy without making so many compromises that it's not the thing you enjoy anymore.
Yeah. And there are certainly examples of people who make film for themselves and then they cross over into some sort of massive hit, right? You mentioned Jordan Peele. Get Out was a very for myself type of movie, and it ended up crossing over and had massive appeal.
Yeah.
But then there are the people like George Lucas who makes a movie for himself, the prequels, and they just don't hit. You know what I mean? Like sure they make money, but no one loves them. And that sort of is the problem. Sometimes is it can go one of two ways. But yeah.
Very true. This whole show is on Hulu. So you can watch it there. But like I said, it's not like coming home and watching Everybody Loves Raymond. You know, you're you're coming home and, you know, you'll be entertained, but it is one of those shows where when it ends, there's not a feeling of satisfaction in that sense, because like you don't feel satiated. And that's the negative of the show, but that's just my reaction to it. But it's more just because it doesn't always, or often doesn't, tie up every loose end, whether it's an actual story, like an A, B, or C story that gets paid off. It doesn't always happen. And sometimes like it's just, you know, an episode will end and you'll kind of be like, what was that supposed to mean? And so in that sense, it can be unsatisfying. But that's kind of why I'm telling you now, like what kind of show it is. So you don't come to it with an expectation for it to be something that it's not, you know?
Yep.
All right. If you do want that feeling and you want that satisfaction and that wrap up and that more classic, straightforward storytelling, I invite you to watch Bosch Legacy. This is my second time mentioning this show. I think I talked about season 1 at some point, but I obviously really loved the original Amazon series Bosch that ran for 7 seasons, I think it was. I haven't read any of the books. It's too late. There's so many of them. But I love the show. Just cop procedural with serialized storytelling, not on cable, or broadcast or whatever. And, just so a little more edge, not as many constraints. Really enjoyed it. And so the show ended and then it was like, hey, we're going to do Bosch Legacy. We're going to like do a spinoff, but like we're going to continue, you know, Titus Welliver's back and, you know, Madison Lintz is back and Mimi Rogers is back. And a lot of side characters too are all back. And, it's almost like keeping Bosch going, except it's not the show Bosch. So, you know, without, here's one, I guess 2 things I'll spoil from the main series of Bosch. He survives the series and he is now a private investigator. He's not a detective anymore. So, you know, and which fits in which does happen in the books at some point. Like he does change the careers like that. So it follows book continuity and it warrants like a very, you know, enough of a deviation that it should be another show and not an 8th season of the main show. Cause the show is different now. Anyways, so I've already kind of told you the premise. Like he's doing private investigator work, and Mimi Rogers' character Honey Chandler is, you know, doing lawyer stuff, and his daughter Maddie is now a police officer in the LAPD, and so she's doing cop stuff, and it's how it all kind of intertwines with high drama and, you know, things happening always to him or always to his kid, things affecting other things, and it's a very uncomplicated show. Like you watch it and you're just like, cool, I understand what's going on. Maybe I forget some people's names that they reference, but they'll say his name again in the next scene when we see his face. So I don't have to worry. You won't get lost, you know.
Sure.
You just sort of let the show, you can just relax when you watch Bosch, and
let the show happen.
That's the appeal of a show like that. It's not hard to watch. It's just, it's very easy listening.
Sure.
Without being stupid or generic. There's a line that shows, I think, Have to Walk, where it's like, we want the show to be digestible, but we don't want it to be predictable or stock. And I think maybe just the performances help with that. Harry Bosch was never a typical detective. I mean, he's like a hard boiled guy and he's like a tough guy, but there's just this style and this fun characterization to him. It's like, just certain things, like he's always listening to jazz on vinyl. Like he's just a big jazz fan, and like his computer guy's a big jazz fan. So it's just this stuff from the books, I guess, that just gives him a different aesthetic than just he's on this goddamn city, like the regular cop would be.
Right.
So it's enough of that, but it's just a little bit different, I think.
Cool.
Anyway, I like Bosch Legacy. The second season, I think, was probably even better than the first. Because I remember being like, okay, the first one was all right, but because this is a freebie. I guess it's Amazon freebie, they call it now, but it used to just be freebie. Well, it used to be IMDb TV, and it's
correct.
Amazon freebie, but they just call it freebie. I hate all those names. But it's not technically Amazon, but it's Amazon show. I watched it through Prime. I don't have freebie, so I don't even know why they pretend like it's different.
Yep.
You're not fooling anybody.
You're not fooling me.
I can see you. Yeah, I recommend it. Especially if you liked Bosch, check it out. But if you haven't seen any of this, I'd go watch Bosch. Bosch recommend, and then I continue recommend this, because I was like, how many of these are they gonna do? And then like this season like sets up like all the main characters get like these big old like cliffhangers, like oh, what is that going to mean? Or oh man, so you kind of already know what the third season's gonna be about, and so it's like, oh great. And I think I even read, was there gonna be 4 seasons, or is there just I don't know. But I like it. I would look forward to watching more of this show. I'd watch another season. I'd watch another 2 seasons. I'd watch 3 more seasons.
Sweet.
It's definitely one of those I look forward to a lot.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Yeah, that's Bosch Legacy. All right.
Sweet.
Let's cross over to someone who's almost a cop, but he's very extrajudicial. Let's talk about Batman.
Hey, Batman.
The Caped Crusader?
Batman Caped Crusader. So this is relatively new. It's on Amazon Prime. This is the newest series from Bruce Timm. So if you're a fan of Batman the Animated Series, this is also created by Bruce Timm, developed for television by Bruce Timm, character designs by Bruce Timm, so it looks very familiar. If you're a fan of Batman the Animated Series, Batman looks very similar here. Not a whole lot to say about it. It stars Hamish Linklater as Batman.
That guy's Batman?
Yeah, it also stars Jason Watkins as Alfred Pennyworth, Dietrich Bader as Harvey Dent, John DiMaggio is Detective Bullock, and there's a whole bunch of other voice talent in here, whether it's Gray Delisle, Yuri Lowenthal, James Arnold Taylor, Jeff Bennett, Jamie Chung plays Harley Quinn, Jason Marsden is in this. Like, it's sort of a who's who of voice talent, which is great because a lot of times we're opting for celebrity talent these days, and this is kind of made in that old school style of like, let's just get whoever's right for the role. Again, not a whole lot to say about it. It is Batman. This is early years Batman, not strictly like year one, but it's very early years. Batman is a vigilante that no one really knows anything about. Like, Commissioner Gordon does not have a bat signal. It's very early in all of that. And notably, this is also co-produced by Matt Reeves and J.J. Abrams. So there is some serialization here to it, although the episodes do sort of stand alone as well. But they're specifically with the Harvey Dent character, acts as sort of the backbone of the serialization. So it kind of follows him episode by episode as he progresses. In episode 1, he's a DA who is running for mayor. And so it's sort of the course of his mayoral candidacy. Meanwhile, there are some mysteries that keep popping up and some masked figures that are doing some crazy things as per usual in Gotham. And so this is the first time Batman interacts with Clayface and Harley Quinn, and so it's interesting in that way. In the end, it does not recapture the magic of Batman the Animated Series, and part of that is Batman Animated Series was very legacy Batman. Like it feels like, and maybe this is nostalgia looking back at it, but it feels like, or maybe it's that everything after Batman Animated Series modeled itself on Batman the Animated Series, but it feels like those takes on those characters were just like, it wasn't novel. We weren't trying to do anything new or unique or crazy. It was just, let's take it seriously and make it, kid friendly, but operatic and still also a little bit dramatic and a little bit dark. And so there are some changes here that I don't quite understand the impetus behind. I don't hate them. Like I've seen a lot of people screaming, woke and DEI about this. I don't care. Like the first episode, Penguin is revealed that it's a female penguin.
Yeah, Minnie Driver.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Oswalda Cobblepot.
Right.
And so like people are like, it's woke. It's a woman penguin. And I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. But I don't quite understand the impetus behind it. So I think that works against it a little bit in that it's not like that legacy version of the character that we know and love. And now here's another version. But it's like, this is a whole new character with, kids and like, that kind of thing. And so it feels... It's not as like easily identifiable as Batman the Animated Series was. And then I think also something that kind of works against it in recapturing that magic is, of course, the voice cast. Again, the voice cast here is great, but you just can't measure up to Andrea Romano's direction of Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy and Adrienne Barbeau and every other actor and actress that made up that original Batman Animated Series. So it does not capture the magic, but it's an enjoyable way to spend 10 episodes. They're 20 minutes, 25 minutes a piece. And it's interesting. Again, I don't think it does anything incredibly notable, and yes, it changes characters, and like there was a big woke because Jim Gordon and Barbara are black, and I'm like, I don't care.
Jim Gordon's black in the Batman.
Exactly, and I again,
no, he's not.
Doesn't matter. Don't care. But again, in these different takes, it doesn't do anything unique enough that warrants me to be like, oh, this is refreshing. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, this is, more, I mean, it's still just Jim Gordon, right? And so all that to say, like, it kind of just like vanishes into the mist of all the other Batman interpretations. It doesn't rise above. It doesn't do anything unique enough to make it stand on its own. And that may be its greatest sin, which is not really that big of a deal because it's just, I'm just saying like, it's not up to the level of Batman Animated Series, but of course nothing is. Like maybe one day we'll have something that is, but today's not that day. It's still good. Like I'll give it 4 stars. I think it's a good way to spend time, but again, it doesn't do anything. Like I think if you were to say, hey, here's somebody who doesn't really know much about Batman, but they're interested in like jumping into the world. Am I going to show them this version? No.
Right.
Would this version excite them enough to continue? No. But if you're already a Batman fan, this is certainly a worthwhile time investment. And especially if you like Batman the Animated Series, this is its spiritual successor. And I think you'll get a lot out of it just from the style And, you know, the fact that like, you know, we haven't even talked about like the characterization of Batman here, but it's very akin to Kevin Conroy's take on the character with the two very different voices for Bruce Wayne and Batman. And also, but he's very quiet and reserved. And there's a lot of him just like walking around and in the shadows and like going through filing cabinets and finding clues and information and being a quiet detective. And so if that's your Batman, like you really love that version of Batman, the Batman that, you know, appears and everybody goes, oh gosh, you scared me. Or like the Batman where they're like, well, Batman, I don't know what we can do. And they turn around and he's gone. Like that, if that's your Batman, like that's what you really love, it's chock full of it. And if you really love that detective Batman who's just like silently walking around and getting clues, you'll love this. But all that to say, like it's again, if you're a Batman fan, it's a good way to spend your time. If you're not a Batman fan, this isn't going to win you over. I would still recommend you go back to Batman the Animated Series. So yeah, that's this. It is a darker, more mature take on it. It's still like, I don't know, like PG-13. There's, you know, some leniency with profanity and whatnot, but like, you know, it's not like ridiculously mature. And that also like leading up to, I'd saw some headlines. It was like the dark, mature take on Batman we've always wanted. And I'm like, well, so I'm watching it through that lens and going, it's not that much darker than Batman the Animated Series. It just has some profanity and that's it. So it doesn't really even like, it's not like it's bloody and gory and whatever. And so, yeah, again, like, and I think that's probably my biggest takeaway is it's good, but it just doesn't rise above and it doesn't do anything unique enough that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we're going to look back and say, that is a standout. You have to watch that show. So it's good, but not great. And that's where the show lands.
Doesn't surpass the video games.
No, it doesn't. And again, those video games are built on the back of Batman the Animated Series.
Yep.
And you take Batman the Animated Series away from Batman, and I think I don't think Batman is what it is today as a brand.
No, I agree. Totally.
So, and this does not reach those heights, and maybe it's wrong to think that it might, but you do want this to justify itself in some way. Like, what is the justification for Bruce Timm coming back to Batman? And apart from just telling more Batman stories, I don't see like a big, like, man, I just had like an interesting take and I had to do this thing. I don't see that here. And that's sort of my big takeaway from it. I just wish there was something that I could point to and say, that's unique. A lot of people have been saying like, it's set in the 40s. And I'm like, yeah, but Batman the Animated Series was set kind of in the 40s. Not really. It's a timeless 40s. Mm-hmm. So again, this doesn't feel novel or unique, even though it's like very strictly 40s, right? Like there's no Bat supercomputer in the Batcave. There's just like a desk with a ledger. And but like, so there's that, whatever. But like, if you're a Batman fan and you have Amazon Prime and you want to kill 25 minutes, this is a great way to do it.
And so this is 10 episodes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say I like Hamish Linklater as Batman. I think he does a really good job. Again, I mean, not Kevin Conroy, but nobody is. But he does a really great job, especially juggling between the aloof version of Bruce Wayne that he presents and that, serious version of Batman that exists. I think the thing that throws it for me and like in Kevin Conroy's direction of like, this is perfection is Conroy. It felt like Batman was his natural speaking voice and Bruce was the put on voice. Mm-hmm. With Hamish's take on it, they both feel put on. Mm. And that I think is the problem. Like, he's very clearly, like, there are scenes where he goes from being Bruce Wayne where he's like, well, gee, Harvey, I don't know what to do. And then he like shuts the car door and goes, Alfred, we've got to go to the Batcave. And it's very like, oh, okay, well, this is also put on. Like, what does Bruce actually sound like?
Right.
And Kevin Conroy was always like, this, when he is Batman, that is his voice.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce is the put on voice. And it felt natural that gravity that Kevin Conroy brought to it was, anyway, whatever. I love Kevin Conroy. I love Batman the Animated Series. This is also very good. You can check it out.
Totally. Hamish Linklater was great in Midnight Mass. He was extraordinary in that show.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be curious to hear his Batman voice.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Well, speaking of Superman.
Yeah. So I got to talk about this. I think I've texted our thread like 18 times. Like, why is no one watching this show? My Adventures with Superman is currently airing on Adult Swim and on Max. So if you have Max, it is currently on hiatus in prep for season 3. But it does air weekly on Max as it airs. I think it airs live on Adult Swim and on Max at the same time.
Oh.
My Adventures with Superman is an anime take on the Man of Steel. It stars Jack Quaid as Clark Kent, Alice Lee as Lois Lane, and a whole bunch of other people. But the easiest way to explain this is Superman by way of anime. And I'm not a huge anime person. And so there's a lot here that probably goes over my head in terms of its influence that I'm not picking up on. Like there's a moment early in the first season where Superman gets his costume and it appears on him similar to like Sailor Moon, right? So like I'm picking up some of this.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the Sailor Moon, like, transformation sequence from girl to superhero. It's very similar to this. So I understand some of the references, but I know I'm not catching all of them. But if you're a big anime fan, I think you would catch all these things. For me, the first season was the first half of the first season was a little difficult to get into because it is very anime inspired and it adheres to a very specific visual language. The characters look similar and there's like a technology that kind of like permeates all these designs. So like Deathstroke, for instance, his costume doesn't really look like Deathstroke. It looks like a machine. And I don't know if this is like a Gundam thing or like where this reference is coming from, but I could see if you have an issue like I did that first season, the first half of the first season, where I'm like, why do the characters look like this? That might throw you. But here's what I'll say. Stick with it, because this is a huge statement. Maybe this is the best version of Man of Steel on television ever.
Oh.
It's certainly the most thoughtful. There is a very clear thought behind everything that happens. It's clear to me that the writers sat down and said, okay, Krypton, what were they doing? Why were they doing it? And how did it impact them to the point of death? Let's think it through from start to finish. Characters like Parasite. Let's think about this and reinvent him in a new way. So he's still Parasite. He's still drawing from Superman's power, but how do we tell this differently? Lex Luthor. This is a very, very different take of Lex Luthor, but how do we do what Zack Snyder tried to do and bring him into the modern world, but do it in a way that still feels like Lex. And let's think through all of these characters. And most specifically, let's think through Clark's Kryptonian heritage and how that impacts him and all of this. And one of the best things that they did was, so if you remember in most versions of Superman, like Clark reaches adulthood or he's 18 or whatever, and his powers are, in full development, and he goes to the Fortress of Solitude and learns from hologram Jor-El, here is Krypton. This is where you come from, and this is what you can do, but use it for good, and all of this. And it just kind of like then jumps forward, and now he's Christopher Reeve, and he's going to go beat up the bad guys and save the cats from the trees. This Superman is very different. We're seeing him as a young adult. His powers are not new, but he does not have the control over them that you would want him to. And not that they're out of control, but like he's still scared of himself. And unsure of himself. He does not have that Superman confidence. And part of that is because though he's a young adult now working at the Daily Planet, we'll call him like 23, maybe 25, somewhere in there. Though he's a young adult, he does not know where he comes from. He knows he's an alien. He's seen his ship, but he doesn't know the name Krypton. He doesn't know anything. And in fact, he sees the hologram of Jor-El, but Jor-El is speaking an alien language he can't understand. So it doesn't help him. He knows, like, I think this is my dad. He's wearing the same symbol as me, but I don't know what he's saying. I have no clue. And so there's a lot of this complexity to his alien heritage that I find really refreshing. And that's what I'm talking about with Batman Caped Crusader. Like, this has a very unique take on the character, just because it's anime inspired, but also we're going to do something new with him. He doesn't know Krypton. He doesn't know what this means. For all he knows, Krypton is an evil planet that's made of invaders. And I'm sent here to invade Earth. I don't want to invade Earth. I don't know that. And in fact, everything is actually leaning him to think in that way, that Krypton is not a good thing. And there's complexity between him and Lois Lane, and their budding romance. His best friend Jimmy Olsen plays a huge role in this. In this version, Jimmy is a blogger. He has a blog called Flamebird, where he's obsessed with like supernatural things.
Okay.
And
supernatural
things. There's all these like new takes on these characters that are fresh and unique. This version of Lois Lane is part Korean. So there's a cultural element to it that we haven't seen before.
That's DI.
It's woke. There are LGBTQ characters in this. But like, it's, man, I don't know, dude. There are departures for sure, like Deathstroke, Slade Wilson doesn't feel like that character. But then there's characters like Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller is the same in every version. She's always just this big jerk. And so there are characters that stay the same. Like this version of Superman is one of my favorite versions of Superman. I'm not going to spoil the specifics here, but there's a moment that I loved. There is this is in season 2 now. Superman is fighting a character, and he does not want to actually injure this other person. And so he's being very careful with how he fights this person. And there's a moment where he swings his fist and you see the fist flying. But as it turns out, the fist misses the target, but it's because it wasn't a fist. It's a hug. He pulls them in for a hug. And it like without the context that sounds so like, sappy or whatever, but like, or whatever. the truth is, like, it made perfect sense in that scenario. And this is what I mean. Like, this is not a Superman like Zack Snyder envisioned him as, just this like brooding, I'm gonna destroy the people that are in my way kind of character. This is a smart, sweet Superman who is salt of the earth. Like, I just want to be a normal person, but also I'm not. I just want to be a good person. Mm-hmm. And that is so relatable. It's the struggle to be a good person and do what's right, and do what's right for Lois, do what's right for Jimmy, do what's right for the people you love. And that is, I think, lacking in a lot of modern interpretations of the character. So yes, this is early days Superman. Yes, he lacks a lot of his confidence that he will presumably one day attain. But for now, like, this is a young Superman who's still learning and still becoming the hero that we want him to be. But in many ways, he's already that character in his morality and in his, like, he's not trying to find his morality. He's there. It's just, I don't have the confidence about me yet. I'm not Superman yet. And that's okay. There's no Justice League. It's not like I've got a million other characters that are looking up to me yet. And he still is not like standing out at a lectern in front of City Hall going, all right, Metropolis, my name is Superman and I'm your hero, and well, like, whatever. This is not that Superman. This is a Superman that I think most people still have not seen his face. He's still hiding. And that's such a good interpretation of the character. As the seasons progressed, so there's 2 seasons out now. Again, it was midway through season 1 when it really hooked me. And season 2 is absolutely fantastic. One of the best Superman stories I've ever seen in animation. It's serialized, which is great. And it makes full use of all of its characters. Lois has a purpose and something to do. Jimmy has a purpose and something to do. This is not a spoiler. This is in the posters. It's in the trailer. Season 2 introduces Supergirl. And this is hands down my favorite interpretation of Supergirl ever. In fact, to the point where, like, by the end of it, I'm getting choked up. Like, this is exactly what Supergirl should have always been. And so all that to say, this gets glowing praise from me. It is not done. There's a 3rd season on the way. They might completely poop in the bed. All I'm going to say is these first 2 seasons have been fantastic, and I've loved every second of watching this story develop. And it's been a long time since I've been excited about a Superman story. And this is certainly the most recent example of that. So, yeah, from style, from story, everything about it sets it apart, takes it way up to another level. And while Superman the Animated Series certainly has its nostalgic glow about it, I think this surpasses it just in terms of its characterization. And I love Superman the Animated Series, so this is saying something. Superman the Animated Series, like Batman the Animated Series, did a lot of things that would shape that character moving forward. And I have a feeling this is going to do the same thing. I think this is going to inspire a lot of people. And as we move down the line, we're going to see a lot of people pulling from this version of Superman as time moves forward. I'm curious to see James Gunn's version. I know that James Gunn, being who he is, has seen My Adventures with Superman. I know he knows about it, all about it, and knows what they're doing for season 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if his version is at least somewhat inspired by this, but also it being a young version of that character. But we'll see. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. My Adventures with Superman is great. You should certainly check it out. And if you were turned off by this thing when it was announced, like so many people were, because that first image came out and Lois has short hair and Jimmy Olsen's black and everyone screamed woke. Because God forbid a woman have short hair and a man be black. So
even Superman in this picture looks like, oh, Jesus Christ.
If that's you, if you were dissuaded because some online commenter said, woke, don't be. It's a great show. And if you love Superman, you will love this. It is so true to that character. It's so true to all of them. This Jimmy Olsen is black, but this is Jimmy Olsen. Like this is your Jimmy Olsen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's been so long since Jimmy Olsen's been utilized at all, other than in Batman vs Superman, where he was mercilessly killed.
That's right.
This is Jimmy
Was he
Olsen.
murdered by terrorists?
Yes, shot in the face by a terrorist. This is probably my favorite interpretation of Jimmy. Like, this is such good stuff here. I just give it a shot. It's fantastic. If you're a Superman fan, you'll love it. If you're not, this might interest you. And if you like Sailor Moon, DBZ, all of these like anime things that came before, you will enjoy this show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If you can actually, anime is really good at action if it's done right. And so
yes,
I grew up on Dragon Ball Z, of course, and so like that's a big influence on how I visualize action. So this definitely appeals to me for sure.
Oh, here's something else that you'll like. They have maybe the best possible casting for Brainiac.
I saw Michael Emerson.
It's Michael Emerson.
Yeah.
I heard his voice and I was like, yo, that's perfect. It's so good.
Do it, John. Shoot him.
It's just Michael Emerson being, this creepy Ben Linus.
Let's go from Superman to The Bear, because now you've seen the third season.
I have. So The Bear is now streaming its third season on Hulu. This is, of course, coming off of its record-breaking season 2 Emmy nominations. Of 23 Emmy nominations for season 2. This breaks 30 Rock's 22 Emmy nomination record, which is from, I don't know, midway through its run, somewhere in there.
30 Rock, of which one of the writers was Donald Glover.
Hey, there you go. See, it all comes around. So The Bear, I talked about this recently. I was really gave a really glowing review to The Bear seasons 1 and 2. Season 3 is mostly fantastic. The first episode of season 3 is one of my favorite episodes of the series. It is probably my second favorite episode of the series. It is so fantastic. I have to call it out. Before I do, I'll just set the stage for you. Season 3 picks up right where season 2 left off. Carmy is in a really low place and looking to just plow forward with his plan, hopefully he can ignore what has happened at this low point and just charge forward. But this is proving difficult for him. So episode 1 is, I texted Kellen about this after we watched it, because I'll set this up. In my last review, I said that The Bear is a TV show that refuses to be a TV show. And episode 1 of season 3 proves this point. Episode 1 of season 3 is mostly dialogue free. There's a lot of clips of things we've already seen and a lot of flashback clips we've not seen from other points in Carmy's life. And it's presented in a way, it's completely without structure. There's no structure to this episode at all. All it is, which is why this show refuses to be a show. There's no structure to this. And there's no precedent for this in the first 2 seasons. Season 3 just opens with this random cacophony of moments from Carmy's life. and you see them in quick succession, and it feels like, that moment right before you fall asleep after like a bad day, or when you're really stressed, or you're like verging on a panic attack, and you have like all these moments pop into your head, one right after the other, of disappointment and anger and things that you wish hadn't happened the way they happened, and things that shaped you in specific ways, regrets, failures and frustrations, all these bad things that pop into your head right before you fall asleep. That's what episode 1 of season 3 is. It is literally like we just are able to peer into Carmi's brain. And so there's no structure to this. Like, conversations don't play out in full. We're seeing brief moments from all of these disappointments. Again, some of them we've seen, some of them we haven't before. But it's just moment after moment after moment of failure and frustration and regret and shame and guilt and pain and all of these things that we know. It's not presented in a way like Carmi's falling asleep and now we're seeing all this. It's just the episode is. It just is all of these things. And it's a fantastic character exploration, again, mostly without dialogue, of what is happening in Carmi's head. And I've never seen a show do this before. Again, just completely throw its structure out the window. No formula, nothing, no care given to like act breaks. Like, we don't care. It's just like spiraling downward into shame and guilt. And it's a fantastic episode. There are other standouts in here. There is an episode, I'm going to pull up the title of it really quickly. There's an episode that focuses on the character of Tina, played by Liza Colon-Zayas, and she gets an episode in here called, give me a second, called Napkins. And this is mostly just her in this episode. We don't get to see much of Carmi. We don't get to see much of anything else. And it's such a great, fantastic episode of just her, and like letting you get to know her as a character more than what you see at the restaurant. It's a great episode, the same way Forks was in season 2. I don't want to go too far into spoilers, because I know some people out there are probably going to want to watch the first 2 seasons. So season 3 inherently spoils things. There are deaths, and there are big questions that are posed to our characters, life choices that they must make. There's birth. There's all kinds of crazy things in this. And of course, it continues the trend of celebrity cameos. Some of them good, some of them not so good. I'll call him out. Josh Hartnett. Great. Love Josh Hartnett in this show. John Cena. No. But it continues what it set up. Jamie Lee Curtis is great again in this season. Like, this is a great show, and it utilizes its cast so well. It utilizes its cameos so well. It utilizes, like, at this point, like, Jamie Lee Curtis coming in is not a cameo. Like, she's a supporting player. She just only pops up once a year or whatever.
Right.
She's such a central figure. Like, her name comes up over and over and over. It really is a great show. I think season 3 is a step down from season 2, and I'll tell you why. There are a few characters in here that I think are given free reign to improvise. And so Maddie Matheson plays Neil Fack, and then his I don't know if it's his brother, maybe, plays Teddy Fack and Theodore Fack. And so they I think they're improvising a lot of this, and it feels like it drags the episode down, and it's comedy, but it's kind of like, it doesn't feel as real as everything else. It feels a little too like showy, or like we're trying to be funny, or we're trying to do whatever. And so to me, the emphasis on that this year, and that's where John Cena comes in. He's another member of the FAC family, and so he gets to improvise comedically with these characters. And I'm not saying that John Cena is not talented. I haven't seen enough of his work to know. All I know is because like the FAC family has taken over this show to such a degree, it kind of distracted from what was actually happening in the drama of it. And I needed that. And I feel like had they reined in that comedy, that forced comedy, and then started to get the comedy back from the character interactions, rather than the bit of these eccentric characters, I think it would have made for a more solid season. And that's really the biggest detriment to the show is that these specific two characters seem to be dragging it down. And I'm sure there are people that love these two characters and find them incredibly relatable and love, how they represent Chicago. Sure. Great. Fine. You can do that. For me, I think they are distracting and they pull an otherwise very tightly scripted show down. And maybe they're not improvising. Maybe it is scripted. But if it is, then it's delivered in a way that feels improvised and it feels a little too showy or pick me. And it's just not as real. And I think that juxtaposition is off this year. And that's it. But it's still a solid show. I just hope that they dial that back and give the focus back to our main players instead of the comic relief characters. But yeah, The Bear, solid recommendation. Season 4, I think, is either being shot or has been shot. But regardless, there is a season 4 coming. So again, as I always say, seasons 1, 2, 3, totally solid. Season 4 might be a big pile of poop. Don't know. We'll see what happens. But seasons 1, 2, 3, great. You can hold me to it.
All right. Cobra Kai.
So Cobra Kai is in its 6th season. And I believe due to the writer's strike and all the other things that have happened, they have split the 6th season into 3 drops of 5 episodes each. 3 drops. So the first part of season 6, the first 5 episodes, have dropped. The next one, I believe, drops in November. This again continues the story of the Karate Kid, stars Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, as well as Shola Maraduena, Mary Mauser, Tanner Buchanan, Jacob Bertrand, Martin Cove, a whole bunch of other people. This is, look, I love Cobra Kai. I've loved the first 5 seasons. I love this season. This season sees our characters, Johnny and Daniel, finally teaming up and joining their 2 dojos into one. And they are training up the next generation together for a worldwide karate tournament called the Sekai Taikai. And they are training them to be the best. And so that's the general premise. But of course, Johnny and Daniel don't always see eye to eye. So there are issues with, joining their dojos. Drama. Also, Chosen, who you may remember from The Karate Kid Part 2, comes in to be another member of the dojo, another leader. And so he has moved into Mr. Miyagi's old home, and they find an old box of secrets of Mr. Miyagi's, things that Daniel LaRusso never knew about Mr. Miyagi. And in that box are some questions, which lead Daniel to, dear listener, the look that Hooper is giving me right now. You can imagine where his mind is going to these secrets, what these secrets may be.
They found a box in his old room. Come on.
And in the box is a few things. One, a passport with Mr. Miyagi's photo, but with a different first name. Some Chinese money. though Daniel never knew Mr. Miyagi to have gone to China. And a whole host of questions about who Mr. Miyagi was, which leads Daniel down a quest to find out, what these secrets that his mentor was hiding from him, what they are, and how they might now flavor his
memory
of Mr. Miyagi. And so, that's happening in the background. There's a lot of, twists and turns. Of course, it's been described, this is a soap opera with karate. It is very much that. So there's, interpersonal conflicts and relationships and deaths and all kinds of crazy things. Man, it's great. It ends with a huge cliffhanger, which everyone on Twitter and across social media, they were just freaking out. Why would you do this to us? And we don't know what's happening until November. Come on. This cliffhanger is going to kill us. And rightfully so. It's a huge cliffhanger and it is tantalizing for sure. But I guess that's just the strength of the show and the fact that people care. So I'm not mad at a cliffhanger. I just am mad that Netflix is choosing to drop part 2 in November instead of like a month from now.
Right.
So, man, it's great. I really enjoyed this. I can't recommend Cobra Kai enough. There's a charm to Cobra Kai, and I was thinking about it this year. There's a charm to this because it feels so independent. Like, this started on YouTube Red, so I'm sure it didn't have a lot of money. Right. Netflix, of course, is giving this money because it pops up as, number 1 most watched show every time it drops. But like, I'm sure they're giving it its money, but it still has this like homegrown feel to it that feels like, I don't know, a YouTuber made it. And so there are episodes that feel really cinematic. And then there are episodes where I'm like, oh, this is like probably made by some dude who's like trying to break into this industry. Like, this is directed by like a dude. And so one of the best directed episodes this year was actually directed by Ralph Macchio and his first directorial debut.
So he got his feet wet and directed.
Yeah, exactly. Which was one of the better episodes this year. But then there are other episodes that feel less polished, and it's charming. It's not like off-putting. It's charming that like this show is like the little show that could, right? In its 6th season, after premiering on a now defunct streaming service, canceled, revived on another streaming service, and they didn't even know if this was even a thing, and then it is just kind of like continued and continued and continued. Who knew? And so there's a charm to this show.
It's easy to forget about YouTube Red.
Yeah, right?
It
lasted for just like a few years, and that was it.
Yeah.
But a few years, like, think about that. Like, it lasted years. But yeah, man, I don't know where they're going with this story, and I certainly don't want to make predictions, but this may lead into our next review, and I can be quick about the next one. But I have a prediction. The prediction is they have already announced another Karate Kid film, and this film will begin filming soon. It'll release after Cobra Kai wraps up, but it will star Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan, and so they are bringing the Jackie Chan Karate Kid and the Daniel LaRusso Karate Kid together. And so my theory is they're going to tie this in somehow with Mr. Miyagi, because as you may have noticed, I mentioned that one of the things they find in his secret box is Chinese money, is a yuan. So clearly Mr. Miyagi spent some time in China, which means he may have run into Jackie Chan at some point, Jackie Chan's character. And so though the Karate Kid 2010 starring Jackie Chan was a reboot with no ties to the original Karate Kid franchise at all,
including the style of martial art.
It wasn't even karate. there is a I believe they are building a through line here to in this show, at least plant the seeds that they can join these two worlds together. And so that's my prediction, because I just think it'd be too random to just do it. I think even though the folks who are making Cobra Kai are not involved in the next movie, I think that Sony Pictures has clearly sat them down and said, you have to work towards this. We're doing this, so you have to work towards it. And I incorporate it in some way, and I think maybe that's all we're ever going to get is, there's Chinese money, and then in the next movie they'll be like, oh, Miyagi spent some time here, and that makes sense now, and that's it. But and maybe that's all we get, but
bare minimum.
The bare minimum, but I think that they're laying the seeds for it, which of course led me to do the unthinkable, which is watch The Karate Kid 2010. I never thought I would watch this film. I avoided it like a plague because, one, I knew it was pretty much a direct remake of the original, though the character names are changed and whatever, and the location is changed, and the style of martial arts has changed.
People kept talking at the time. They're like, it should have been called the Kung Fu Kid.
And you're like, yeah, I know exactly why they called it the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
And like, okay, cool. But they probably could have called it like the Karate Kid, something else, the Jaden Smith story. But like,
the Kung Fu Child.
Yep, the Kung Fu Child. But yeah, it made me sit down and watch that film. And so I do want to talk about it for a quick second. The Karate Kid 2010 is directed by Harold Zwart. I do not know who Harold Zwart is.
That sounds like a 1800s ailment,
sure.
like a cure, like St. John's wort,
St. John's wort. Yeah. Looking at his IMDb, he directed Agent Cody Banks.
Oh.
He directed The Pink Panther 2. He directed The Mortal Instrument, City of Bones. That's it. And some other stuff I don't know.
The Steve Martin Pink Panther, obviously.
Yes, correct. I think the second one had Beyonce in it. Maybe I'm misremembering that. Anyway, it stars Jackie Chan, Jaden Smith, Taraji P. Henson, and a whole bunch of other people. And the story is, and I'm gonna paraphrase here, and I am gonna steal this recap from a review I saw on Letterboxd. The story is about Jaden Smith, and his life gets turned upside down when he's chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and shooting some b-ball outside of his apartment. When a couple of guys who are up to no good start making trouble in his neighborhood, he gets in one little fight, and his mom got scared and said, "You're going to go study kung fu with the guy downstairs." That is that's the story of the Karate Kid. So Jaden Smith is the Daniel LaRusso stand-in, and Jackie Chan is the Mr. Miyagi stand-in. His character's name is Mr. Han. So Jaden Smith, Trey, and Mr. Han begin training for a tournament because the biggest bully in school is the star pupil, and Dre believes if I can defeat him, then one, I'll no longer be scared of him, and two, I'll show him that he shouldn't make fun of me anymore. And that's sort of the general premise of the movie. It is very, very much beat for beat, it is the original, just with names changed and locations tweaked. And other than that, it's exactly the same, and it's updated with, cell phones and whatever, although they're flip phones because it's 2010, but like cell phones and, a giant jumbotron scoring system at the karate tournament.
Black people.
Correct. It takes place in China. Like the whole thing is Dre and his mom moved to China. And so it takes place in China as opposed to in, Los Angeles. And so I'm pulling up my letterbox here because I want to remember what I gave this. I gave this 3.5 stars. I think it's a good movie. I certainly don't like it as much as the Daniel LaRusso films, but there's a lot of heart here, and more than I was expecting. And I'm going to throw this out there. Jackie Chan is phenomenal in this movie.
I love Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan's fantastic, and like nobody disputes that. Nobody ever says I hate Jackie Chan. No one's ever said that in the history of the world. No, there has never been criticism of Jackie Chan.
No.
But what he does in this film is take material that's okay and delivers it so passionately that you buy every second he's in. He's just so endearing. It's phenomenal. There's a moment in this film where Dre has a night off from training, but he goes to Mr. Han's house anyway. And he finds Mr. Han is drunk and is destroying a car that he's been rebuilding. And this mirrors a scene in the original Karate Kid where Mr. Miyagi's drunk and Daniel finds out about his history in the war and coming from Japan and all of that. And so, there's a history to it from that perspective. Like, of course, this moment's going to happen because it happened in the original. But Jackie delivers this moment where we find out that his son and his wife were killed in a car wreck. And every year he spends the year rebuilding the car that they were killed in. And when it is completed, he gets drunk and destroys it again. And it's this like heartbreaking cycle. And so he's drunk. He's got the newspaper clipping there for Dre to conveniently see. But Jackie, I'd have to watch it again, but I don't remember Jackie ever even saying anything. I think he's just like a broken person and he's weeping and you're just like, dude, this is a kid's movie. You don't have to do this much work. But here he is like, this is such good acting.
Yeah.
And so much is said about Jackie Chan as a physical performer, as a stunt coordinator, as, all of these things, which he's fantastic at all of that.
Yeah.
But no one ever talks about how good of an actor he is.
I know.
He's so good.
He's criminally overlooked for his diverse skill set like that.
It's true. And like, I'm watching this going, you don't have to try this hard, but he's killing it. And it's so
Groot,
good.
You'll die.
And it's so good. Yeah, man, I enjoyed this film. It's not up to the level of some of the other Karate Kid films, but it's fine. It is overly long, so strap in. It's a little over 2 hours. Let's check here. 2 hours 20. Like, it's a long movie. This could have been an hour 45. But okay, it's overly long, but it's fine. Strap in, you'll have a good time. It's on Netflix. Check it out if you have Netflix. Yeah, man. Karate Kid. It's fine.
This is the only Karate Kid movie I have seen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry.
I don't admit it very much because it's a travesty.
It is. At least it's not the Hilary Swank Karate Kid, which the next Karate Kid, which I like because it's bad.
Do you say that to Hilary Swank when you see her on the street?
Yes,
I love
seen
doing
her twice.
Karate Kid because it was so bad.
Because it's bad. Yeah. But man, like, oh, and that's the other thing. I do predict she's going to show up in Cobra Kai before the end.
She's got to. Yeah. If fucking Jackie Chan's coming back.
Everybody else has.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, there's no character on Earth like in that franchise that has not come back.
We're going to have a CG Pat Morita too.
I was going to say, that's why I said on Earth. I really think that, I think they'll do something. I don't know what.
He'll be a force ghost.
A force ghost, Mr. Miyagi. He'll make Daniel wax on, wax off his casket. I don't know, man. I think they'll do something, and it'll either be like using archival footage. I don't know. They'll do something. I think the series won't end without some. I mean, he's appeared in flashback already, but like he'll appear. He'll do something. It'll be like he's leaving Daniel a message. Oh, look, I found a DVD that Mr. Miyagi made, and you won't see him, but you'll hear him, and you'll find a voice, sound alike. I don't know, whatever. They'll do something, but whatever. Yeah.
They'll find a way to cross the line just a little bit.
They will. So, yeah, man. That's a lot of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. What was that, like 7 things?
Probably.
Yeah.
This is like a catch-up episode. But I don't know, man. Like, I've seen some good stuff lately. It's good to finally see some stuff where I'm like, this is good. Like, the least good thing is The Karate Kid, and it's good.
Yeah. Well, these are all, I mean, the 2 shows that I mentioned are big time investments, but and I guess Cobra Kai is as well. But I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we don't just talk about movies on this show, man. We've got TV too. So
that's right. And life.
And life. Yeah.
Don't take our life advice though.
Mixed results on our life advice.
2.5 stars on that advice there, Hooper.
Oh man, remember when I gave up coffee?
You can wait for that advice on streaming. Don't pay full price for that ticket.
Oh. All right. Well, with that, I did begin the episode suggesting you hoard prescription drugs. So
this is true.
I'm not really a reliable. I'm no Mr. Miyagi in that front.
You're the anti Miyagi.
My Karate Kid would just be me inhaling these albuterol, whatever, these. My wife and kids. I rebuilt this car. I fill my lungs with this magic powder. And then I huff and puff and blow the car apart.
Look at my lung capacity now.
Watch this. All right. With that, that's it. Cool. It's August. Great. Wherever you are, I hope you're not sweating your ass off like me.
I am.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, everybody. That's it.
That's it.
See ya.
See ya. Supernatural things,